Hello, Navid. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Bola. I am stoked to have this conversation with you today.
It's awesome. So I'm excited. I'm talking to you here today. So, Navid, your career journey spans 26 years across multinational organizations. Will you share with us what were your biggest career lessons that shaped who you are today? Maybe one career lesson that you want to share with us.
Wow. So it has to be what my good friend and mentor has titled one of his books at, and that book is titled "What Got You Here Won't Get You There."
I know
And
that.
Bola, as much as I would like to keep this my own little secret. The reality is I've messed this up more than once in my career, meaning I came to a new position, not necessarily with a fresh mind and an open mindset, but with my success playbook from my previous role. And I had high hopes that if I were to play it all over again, and arguably I was successful before, and that success got me the big promotion into this position here that everything would go well from there. But the reality is that is unfortunately not how it works. And I had to learn the lesson the hard way.
That's so good. So life is all about learning and improving. We call it continuous improvement. So for you, you today you are helping leaders in their first 120 days. Why is that important, Navid?
Yes. So this is distinction I would like to make is that I actually help the newly appointed executive in the first 12 months and not necessarily just in the first 90 days or 100 or 120 as you refer to. Although again, I wish it was that simple. It's beyond me, Bola, why anyone, including an executive leader, must be sitting on their hands looking outside of the window, waiting patiently, and then start to run like crazy on day one, and then stop running after 90 days, which is what the first 90 days is suggesting. So, my philosophy and the framework that I gave birth to in my book is fundamentally different, and that is it takes roughly 6 months for a newly appointed executive to really come to terms with their new position, to really understand. Oftentimes, they are hired from the outside to really understand this organization, maybe this new industry, this new context, and so on. And so it's then, takes them another 6 months to really have a plan of action, to know exactly what are the key areas I would like to address, what are the two or three big, hairy, audacious goals that I want to, shoot for in the first 12 to 18 months to come. And so it just, although I would love that to be a 90-day sprint, it's more like a 12 to 18-month marathon. And that's the first thing I want to, communicate with the executive. Because again, the first 90 days is such a strong myth that a lot of people actually still believe that that actually works for top level leader appointments. But unfortunately, it doesn't.
No, thank you, Navid, for expressing that views. So you broke it down. You said first 6 months, you want leaders to understand the business. How can they do that? When you say understand the business, what exactly do you mean, Navid?
Yes. So essentially, so you have to think of the first 12 months as a seven-phase framework. This is the double diamond framework that I describe at full length in my book. And if I wanted to look at the first 6 months, this is the first four phases. The first phase is called discover. This is actually your day minus 90 to day zero, meaning, if you know you are the incoming chief sales officer for GE. Well, it's good that you know that because that will give you a unique advantage and some leverage points around as and when you are being appointed. There is usually a lead window, a lead time, 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, depends on what geography you're in and what other company you're working for. And so the first insight I want to share with your listeners is that this critical time window of between minus 90 and day zero is super critical because there are very many concrete things that the executive can do in this, before starting. And here I rely on the work of another gentleman called Michael Burrows, who wrote this fantastic book, super short read, called Before Onboarding, Critical Onboarding Strategies Before You're Being Appointed. And then that brings us to the second phase of my seven phase framework. That phase I called immerse. That is your day 1 to day 90. That's your typical 90 days. And I think I really don't need to say anything here because the first 90 days has been widely established and too much for my taste, because a lot of people assume it's the only phase you need to pay attention to and you can forget about the rest. So that's very clear. This is the phase where the newly appointed executive is building their brand, making sure that they understand the organization in a true sense, and then start to think about, okay, what are the two, three big, hairy, audacious goals I want to set out to achieve 12 months down the line. And that then brings us to phase three. I titled this phase Adapt. This is your day 91 to 120. So this is your month 3 to 4, roughly speaking. This is the phase, and there's a reason I titled this Adapt, where both the leader and the organization need to adapt to one another, right? And of course, it's a much easier case if the executive is the chief executive officer of the company. He or she is the most senior person. So there's a lot of weight and authority that comes with that seniority level. And at the same time, I mean, there is also a partial adjustment they need to make to adjust to the existing culture, to the existing, beliefs, the ways of working and everything else, even though they may not be completely convinced that this is the only way. And so the adaptation needs to happen on both sides. So that then brings us to phase four. This is the phase I call mobilize. This is your month 4 to month 6, broadly speaking. And this is the phase, Bola, where you, as the incoming executive, must make sure that whatever you want to achieve is not just understood by the function that reports into you. So let's assume you are the chief sales officer and sales and marketing are your remit. It's wonderful if marketing and sales people understand clearly where the direction of travel is going, but it would be much more powerful if also the technology function is coming to the same understanding, if the finance division is coming to the same understanding, if the HR people are really supportive of whatever the mission is that you want to achieve. And so, this is where you need to make sure that you mobilize the wider organization and not just rely on your position of authority and power, and you just make the management call in your own division and hope or expect that all the other leaders are going to come along on the journey. And that then brings us to phase 5. I call this phase operate. This is where the rubber clearly needs to hit the road. This is months 6 to months 9 after being appointed. And this is where you really need to make sure that everything is moving at pace in the direction of travel that you set out to achieve. Now, of course, if things have shifted, if there is a course correction that needs to be made, that's perfectly fine. But broadly speaking, this is where you have not only mobilized the organization, but you're now executing at pace on this 2 or 3 big, hairy, audacious goals. And that then brings us to the 6th phase. I titled this phase Nourish. This is your month 9 to 12. And this is where the leader needs to demonstrate to the organization that whatever they set out to achieve is actually doable, is starting to come to fruition. Some people speak about the low-hanging fruits or the quick wins, whatever the term is that you like. But this is where you need to demonstrate to the organization that whatever you wanted to achieve is now starting to realize and materialize in a small way, but directionally in the right direction. And that then brings us to the 7th and the last phase. I call this phase develop. This is where I will sit down with the executive leader and we will look at the past 12 to 18 months and we will take a stock as to, okay, Bola, if you were my coaching client, I would give that to you as a homework ahead of the final session. And then you would come prepared to the session with questions that I have shared with you prior to the prep, such as What assumptions did you make before you were appointed? And how many of those did you have to correct once you were in the role? And by the way, what is the learning as a result of that? What critical mistakes did you make in the last 12 to 18 months? I'm not talking about tiny mistakes. I'm talking about big, big, big mistakes that it will be painful for you to even go back and try to think of those. But the reality is, if you are at the top of a house, you're more likely to make those mistakes than not. And so even if it's one or two, what is the learning as a result of those mistakes? And how were you wrong, maybe with your assumptions? Maybe you underestimated a particular stakeholder group. Maybe you oversold a particular ambition. Maybe you undersold the dream. Whatever the mistake is, I now want, and this is just you and me, so it's confidential. It's completely safe to say what you think. It's really your moment to start to reflect back and really start to think about all the learnings you've had. And the reason behind this particular phase, Bola, is the fact that we are much more likely to learn from our previous mistakes than from our previous successes. And so once that session is concluded, and once you or whoever's the client has got a felt sense of all the things they have done and learned over the last 12 to 18 months, that is then what I call the embodiment of the transition. And that is what I call, as a concept, executive transition intelligence, which is going to be a sure way that if you are going to transition again in the future, not only are you unlikely to repeat the mistakes that you have made during the last 12 to 18 months, but you have a felt sense of what it takes to succeed. And you're much more likely to succeed in the future than to fail. So that it's a 7-minute summary of the 7-phase double diamond framework, which actually occupies a big chunk of my best-selling book.
I love it. So, Diamond Framework: discover, immerse, adapt, mobilize, operate, nourish, and develop. Thank you, Navid, for
Exactly.
sharing those details. Now, you talked about mistake, and I want to maybe double click on that. I want you to share with us some of the biggest mistakes that leaders make when starting a new executive role, based on
Mhm.
your
Yes.
dealings with it.
Yes. So one of the biggest mistakes I have seen is what I already shared with you, which is okay, I've been there, I've done that, I feel pretty confident. What could go wrong? And as we know too well, there are many things that could actually go wrong. So that's the first one. The second one is the leader underestimating the three softer topics of leadership. And those three topics are people, culture, and politics, right? So nothing to do with functional or technical skills. As I like to say it on podcasts, it's the functional or technical skills that gets you promoted into the C-suite. And it's the lack of the so-called soft skills that gets you fired pretty quickly after that big promotion of yours. So if you are either not good or do not pay enough attention to people, culture, politics, that is a sure sign that you are going to walk on some of these landmines that are laid out for you. And the second you walk onto those, something is going to blow up. And I wish you good luck to try to improve from there. And then the other part of what I think is really true is the amount of stress that you should expect as soon as you step into the C-suite. I think this is the biggest gap that I see with some of the leaders, especially those that have been promoted to the C-suite for the very first time. I mean, I have been there myself, but as an HR leader, I have seen that too many times that the new CFO has been appointed. Now she is in her beautiful corner office. And of course, every single day she's burning the midnight oil in her corner office. So she's cutting down on her sleep. She's cutting down on her engagement time with her leadership team and other people. And she's studying and reading and analyzing and thinking and dreaming about all the things that she wants to change. And it's like week 2, she's now down to 3 to 4 hours of sleep every night. She's become unmanageable as a leader. She's become intolerable as a life partner. Her children have stopped talking to her. And she's become super irritable because, of course, if you start to starve your entire system of its most critical asset, which is nourishment and sleep, well, guess what? That's got to do to your analytical skills, to your cognitive skills, to your judgment skills, and to your relationship skills. So those are just some of the ideas I can share with you as to what can get in the way and what have I seen in real practice to, yeah, be a derailer of the career of the executives that have been appointed into the C-suite.
So thank you. I like your comment about this stress level that gets maybe to increase when people assume new leadership position. But I also want to help them. How can they manage this stress? You are right. It's more responsibility because it's a leadership role. But how can they manage the position without necessarily getting burned out?
Sure. So this is why, if you were to look at the double diamond framework, there is an upper arc and a lower arc. And the upper arc says optimizing the energy levels of the executive leader. And here again, I cite the good work of a gentleman called Tony Schwartz. He and a lady whose name I can't remember published an article in Harvard Business Review in October 2007. And that HBR article was titled Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. And it was really a very compelling case as to, as a new executive leader, why focusing on nourishing and replenishing your energy levels is going to give you a lead in the business, then optimizing your time, which, as we know, it's burning the midnight oil and giving more time to your work, more time to the analysis, more time to emails, more time to meetings, more time to everything that doesn't really, replenish your energy levels. And these authors work with a particular framework that they, again, invented, and that one is what I've baked into the Double Diamond framework. And that's the one that I would recommend the leaders to, put into practice. Now, the reality is that, there's also a very quick and dirty self-assessment included in the energy assessment that these authors have come up with. And not to bore your audience with the full detail of that, in a nutshell, what the framework suggests is to really pay attention to the four quadrants that will replenish and nourish your energy levels. And the four quadrants are spirit, mind, emotions, and body. And all four need to be attended to an okay degree. Nobody expects the CEO to be a Zen leader and come fully meditated into the boardroom sessions, although that may not be such a silly idea. But the reality is, if you have one of or two of these four areas where you pay zero attention and you don't invest anything in it, let's take the physical, for instance, right? I mean, you're sitting in the office for long, long hours. It's a thing of you sitting in a car, either you drive or do you have a driver if you're senior enough to get to the office. Then you're sitting on the plane. Then you're sitting in your client's boardroom. Then you're sitting on the train. Then you're sitting at the train station. Then you're sitting in the airport lounge. And then as at the time you get home, you're sitting on your couch and then you're lying down. Well, what happened to your physical energy here? How did you what exactly did you do to attend to this one aspect of the four? And so again, it really is a game-changing proposition that Tony Schwartz presented to the world almost 20 years ago. And so that's how I would recommend, and that's why I'm not too shy to cite other people's great work if I feel that they have given to the world something that I couldn't have done in a better way, and that's why I cite the work and include them in my work.
Thank you, Navid. I love it. Now, you mentioned people, culture, and politics. And a lot of people have said a lot about politics and the place of work. Can you tell us more about this politics? Because one of my past guests actually said our career is like a game. You have to know how to play the game. I believe the same is politics. How can we play that politics so that we can succeed?
Mm. See, I actually personally dislike the notion of politics. And if I had a magic wand and I could make one thing to disappear from the world of work, it would probably be politics or, toxic cultures. The reality is though, they do exist. And if we were to put, like an ostrich does, put our hand into the sand and pretend they don't exist, well, that would be lovely, wouldn't it? The reality is, though, that they do exist. And so we better have a way to work with that. And the one example I want to share with you is when I worked for a pharmaceutical giant called Roche, and I've been very public about that. They created a new position for me and then hired me into that. And Bola, I can't tell you how much harder my job actually became because there was no one to hand over to me. And although in their, logic, they had described my exact roles and responsibilities in a job description, that actually meant that some of the quite senior and heavyweight HRDs who were in the structure and with the company for a decade or two didn't want to let go of the beloved projects and, more importantly, the beloved budgets to this almost junior looking guy who is now supposed to look after this. So, when it came to, transferring FTEs or headcount to my new, department, well, on the org chart, it says that this person has six individuals who work on this particular topic. And now that the topic is moving to me, my expectation is, my baseline assumption is that those six individuals move along with it. But suddenly, magically, only one out of those six individuals actually works on this. And the others, although have a very similar job title, they work on entirely different things. And so you see, if I were to just give in and say, okay, fine, well, whatever, fine, I just trust that that's the case. Well, if I were to agree to everything like that, I would never be able to succeed because the role description assumes certain resources. And if those resources are not transferred to me, then I will not be able to deliver on the mandate, the
Yeah.
same mandate that had been tasked me into my role that was newly created. And there is an expectation that I deliver on it 12 months down the line. And so again, it's not that I want to encourage people to start to, get engaged in politics. But again, on the same token, putting your head in the sand and hoping things are going to go away is not helpful. So you need to find a middle way. You need to find a middle ground. If you're not good at it, go and buy the top three books on how to manage politics. If you are really, sucking at it, go and find a mentor who is a maestro in organizational politics. Go and find someone who has been an ambassador and has been having posts in very tricky countries that were not friendly to the country that sent him there as an ambassador. So there are so many ways you can upskill your own functional technical knowledge. That's essentially what politics is all about without necessarily engaging yourself as a full-time politician.
So good. So on this podcast, I also like to talk about the future of work. So since you deal with leaders, what leadership skill, in your opinion, will become more valuable over the next decade, considering everything we are having with AI and how it's transforming the way we work today?
Yes. So one thing I've learned is that futures are rarely correct in hindsight. And so that's my humble opinion. And I have seen too many, far too many. I've been working for seven large multinational companies in the 26 years. And every other year or so at the leadership conference, they get to, invite someone who's a futurist and they have the magic ball and the crystal ball and they can look into the future. If you were to go and actually check what that individual said 5, 10 years later, you will find out very quickly that they were probably not right. Which brings me back to, what do I believe are going to be the six essential qualities of extraordinary leaders, not only today, but 5, even 10 years into the future, despite or in view of this new enablement technology called AI that's entered our world. So the first two are being confident and having the degree of self-awareness. Without naming any famous world politician who has a lot of confidence, but unfortunately is lacking the self in look in the mirror to actually judge whether any of the stuff that he's, saying to the wide world is actually landing or not. You see, it's the combination of these two qualities that I call it self-leadership, right? So if you can lead yourself, that's a good place to start. And the output of these two is, if you get it right, is that you are able to expand your identity. So these are the first two. The next two are being connected and inspiring at the same time, right? And what I mean by that is connected means you, as a leader, no matter your seniority level in the organization, you have no issue to connect with the lowest level employee of the same organization or an external person, no matter what seniority level they're at. And not only that, but you are connected to the wider organization. You're not one of those that, has been in the fortress in the ivory tower, and all they get to look at is the management dashboard, and they don't really have connections with the wider organization. I think I learned that very well at GE with what GE called at that time skip level meetings, and the view that you need to start to shape as a leader by going above and beyond your direct reports and your next lane hierarchical leadership level. And inspiring means this was in the year 2000. I actually got to meet the man himself, Jack Welch. I got to meet Philip Kotler, the marketing guru. I got to meet and speak with Stephen Covey, who wrote the famous book, The Seven Habits. Gosh, I mean, Bola, I mean, with Stephen Covey in particular, I was in a room with 20 people, and when he spoke, I felt I'm the only person with him in the room. I mean, that transcendent energy, that, clarity, that inspiring, energy that I felt really made me think that I'm the only person with him in the room. So these two pay a dividend on team leadership and ultimately are there to enhance the impact of the leader, which brings me to the final two qualities: courage and clarity. Again, I know far too many executives and politicians who have almost too much courage, but not necessarily the clarity and the vision as to, okay, I'm gonna, drop all the bombs in this country. What is actually my plan of action? What is my exit strategy if this doesn't work out? And so these two pay a dividend on business leadership and ultimately are there because, again, unless you work for a charity, and I would even claim if you work for a charity, you still have big, bold ambitions to achieve. These two help you as a leader to elevate your results. So it's the combination of these six qualities that will make sure that you are tapping into what I call extraordinary leadership, not only today, but 5 and 10 years down the line, no matter whether AI or any of these, developments are kind of coming to fruition in the world of work.
Oh, good. I love it, Navid. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Mastering Executive Transitions. Where can my listeners get your book?
Anywhere you can buy books from. I mean, literally from Amazon to Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore if you want to support them more than the big behemoth giant book sales shops. It's also available as an audiobook. It's available as a workbook if somebody wanted to take the core findings and put them into action. I also have short version formats of the book, whether it's Get Abstract or AppWork. There's all sorts of different versions of the same that's made available. I really am keen to make sure that this works finds as many leaders and audiences as possible.
Thank you for sharing that. So finally, do you have any word you want to leave with us to help this community so that we can continue to thrive in our career, Navid?
I guess I would have to recite the gentleman called Nassim Taleb, who once said, invest in preparedness, not in prediction. And that is the last word of wisdom I can share with you guys today.
Thank you. So where can we find you, connect with you so that we can continue this journey with you, Navid?
It's super simple. LinkedIn is the only real social media platform that I have a presence on. I actually manage my own LinkedIn account. I am set to be friendly and welcoming. And I also have a weekly newsletter that is currently subscribed by more than 8,000 executive leaders, free of charge. And if anyone from your listeners wanted to sign up for my newsletter, I will give them a free sample of my international best-selling book as a result.
Thank you, Navid. We appreciate your kind gesture. That's it. Thank you.